Gotta turn my volume down on this a little bit.
Oh yeah, I got the Twitch channel up. I was wondering what the hell the music was. I was like, what?
Where's the music coming from? Yeah, now you know.
Random advert turned up.
Oh man, still hungry for pizza. I had pizza, but now I want more pizza.
So you moved on from the days of because YouTube for a while was attempting the whole stream thing, wasn't it?
It was, but they just did not have the viewers. They just didn't, and yeah, newest follower. Really? I'm actually trying to look at my recent events, and I have no idea where this person is. That's weird.
I feel the urge to unfollow each time I want this thing, and then to click follow again just so my name keep turning up. Yeah, following.
Oh, I don't... Well, see, actually, you know what? If you want it to come up again, I think what I have to do is... There we go. I replayed it for you. There you go.
Oh, look at that.
I have to go into the Streamlabs and let it replay. I don't even know where that's coming from. That's really weird. Anyway, great. Awesome.
Have a viewer.
Hey, Isha, how are you? Welcome back. We are going to be talking... this is something a little different. We are doing... Well, what
No idea.
No idea what we're doing, actually. No, we have Asteldian here with us, one of our DCN crew, who we're just going to talk games like we always did. And we're going to stream some ESO. I think I'm going to be leveling my handbag, a.k.a. my Argonian. No, he's a handbag. He's clearly going to be a handbag. Aw, I have updates to do. That sucks. I don't want to do updates.
Right, well, I managed to get half my gear back. I'm doing well here.
Now, you're playing the Saga of Lucimia Alpha that we streamed the other day, right?
Yeah, I'm cruising on that. I got killed by a bear, and I think I'm on attempt number 9 of trying to get my corpse back.
I see. I'm surprised. Well, we did die. No, we did die the other night during our stream a few times because I wouldn't get out of the bandit cape. I'm just like, yeah, no, we're good. Let's keep going.
That's it. High octane action. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Yep. Had to keep going.
Come no closer.
Come no closer. Why not? I want to come closer, and I can't read that book.
Damn it! I've got a deer on me.
My words.
One of the. You know, it's actually funny. At least in reality, deer actually tend to cause more fatalities here in the U.S. than bears do. I don't know if you realize that.
I did not. It's a crazy place you live in.
Well, to be frank, it's mostly due to the fact that they like to run out in front of cars and stuff like that. But there's actually been a lot of incidents of hunters being like gored to death by deer that weren't dead yet.
Yeah. A bit overeager.
Yeah, I mean, well, they got antlers and they're sharp. They're very sharp, so you know it happens. Ah, my white cap. I have to adjust all my controls on here. Oh, it's a mess. But as we were saying pre-show, like we were trying to decide what game we were going to play while we were talking about different games and stuff like that. And I wanted to play, like, I guess I should say this. I wanted to want to play LOTRO because I've been recently listening to all my audiobooks from Tolkien. And of course, I start with the Silmarillion. And I adore the Silmarillion. Absolutely,
you're a braver man than me, man. Tolkien. He loves his trees.
Loves trees. Tolkien's amazing. I adore his work. I've actually done everything that he's ever published. So I mean, I don't know. Like I really enjoy his work, and I love the Silmarillion because it's so disjointed. At first, it was kind of hard to get into because of that, But especially as I've been studying Elder Scrolls lore, which is obviously all over the place, I've come to respect that kind of storytelling, if you will, and it's easier to follow now. But every time I play that game and I listen to that book or whatever, because I have the audiobooks, I tend to go, man, I really want to play LOTRO to get into Middle Earth, but I can't. Every time I try, I've never made it out of the Bree lands. Because I always play. Well, I don't know. You played LOTRO. Does everyone start in the Bree lands, or do you, if you play a hobbit or a dwarf, do a different place?
I think everyone started in the same kind of place. I couldn't tell you. That's been many years since I played the game.
Okay.
All I remember is playing a few characters, my guardian, and I just felt my skills were so bland.
Well,
I'm not talking like low magic kind of bland. I'm just talking about I didn't feel like a hero at all. And I know if things went wrong, I had nothing. It's like, I don't really have any oh crap moments here. And so me, my wife, my mate, we'd be playing. And as soon as the shit hit the fan, it was like, well, we're going to die now because there's nothing clever we can do to get out of the situation. I mean, there were some things, but not like I'm used to in games where you've just got that, whether it be like a paladin that's lay on hands or whether it be a route or something to really take them all out so you can all run. I didn't feel there was as much as that going. The most exciting thing I had as a guardian was an acorn, which meant someone else could summon me to them, which would have been awesome, but you can be used in combat. It's like, well, the one time you want to summon a tank to you is when you've gone into combat and accidentally, and you need someone to come save your ass.
Interesting. I don't like when you first said about the class being uninterested. The first thing I thought of was like, well, especially early on, they had to abide by, and I'm glad they did. But the Tolkien estate tends to have a very strong opinion on about how the work is done. I don't know if you realize this, but before LOTRO became LOTRO, it used to be called Middle Earth Online. Or at least that's what its working title was a long time ago. Middle Earth Online was vastly different than what LOTRO became. Middle Earth Online was actually a pure sandbox. Like, they actually were even flirting with the idea of permadeath, right? The ability to become corrupt, like your actions were supposed to corrupt you as a person, or, you know, if you did the good route, you'd be a good person. But it actually, you had this whole alignment system where you could actually be one of Sauron's soldiers if you corrupted yourself over time. I specifically remember this video. I actually kind of wish I could still find it, but they sped it up and they showed a character that was running around, and they put on all this dark armor, and all of a sudden now they're an evil character, and their character changed. The other thing that I thought was kind of neat was they were actually going to randomly select the accounts that could play elven characters, because they wanted to portray the idea of the waning of the elves and the dominion of men. So they were going to limit the amount of elves that were able to be played in the game.
Oh.
This actually got shut down.
That bet it did.
Huh?
I bet it did.
Well, it was actually for one of the more weird reasons. It was actually because the Tolkien estate found out about the idea of the corruption mechanic, and they did not want that. Apparently, it was part of their contract that at no point in time could a player be evil. You always had to be good. They didn't want you to be able to switch to an evil alignment. That was actually one of the reasons why the contract got moved from Middle Earth and it got rebranded as Lord of the Rings Online, and the entire scope of the game actually changed. Was because of that little legal snafu once the Tolkien estate found out what they were doing with the idea of a evil alignment. Like, what? You can have evil hobbits? No, you can't do that.
Little evil hobbit in his badass armor.
Yeah, it was fascinating, and I was always kind of upset. Not that the Tolkien estate did that for one reason or another, but that Middle Earth Online didn't exist, because I think that would have been something that would have been a very interesting MMO set in Middle Earth, because LOTRO kind of came in at a time when World of Warcraft was the big game to play, and
it followed all the other rules in the end.
Yeah, it did. And honestly, the only real thing that made it any different, I guess, is the fact that it had the Lord of the Rings name on it. And I don't even know how far that really brought it.
Fairly far, I guess, for a while, in the same way that ESO, in many ways, isn't really much different to any other sort of game with your quest hubs, etc. Better quality sort of quests, and some things are nice about it, but really, if it weren't the Elder Scrolls world, I do wonder just how many people would stick with it, in particular over other things.
Well, I mean, you're already kind of seeing that. When newer games are coming out, people tend to leave ESO unless they have a real love of the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, I think the game is really good. There's a few things I wish they would change. For me, it's mostly monetization policies, and there's a few other things I think they really could have done to really make the world a little bit more Elder Scrolls-y in feeling, but otherwise it's a really good game, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Well, I played that game for what? Until the first expansion, just after the first expansion. Not long after buy-to-play, of course. But, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's a well-made game, It does what it says it's supposed to, It's an MMO that meets expectations. I guess that's kind of the problem for me, because in general, meeting the expectations of MMOs means it's kind of the same as the others, just with a different skin on it. Because that's what most MMOs are nowadays, just a different skin of the same sort of routine. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not like they failed to make the gameplay right. It works well. They did it correctly. It's just it isn't really stand out from the crowd, as it were. Aside from being the Elder Scrolls lore, it could be another game, really.
Right. And I can tell you, I don't think I would have spent as much time in it as I did if it wasn't for the Elder Scrolls name. Because the Elder Scrolls is something that I do love as a world, and I'm sure a lot of LOTRO players feel the same way. I don't think they really do anything so vastly different or better than other games that people go, yeah, this is the game I'm going to play, But, yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that. And Isha says, ESO is my current go-to. Well, ESO is my current go-to as well, because I haven't found anything else that's out that really kind of fits the niche that I really want to play. So I stick with the world that I love, because it is it's an enjoyable game, and it fills the lore side of me that I really, really want to see.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, I say, you at this state in the MMO genre, you're just picking what flavor of ice cream you want. Is really what it comes down to. It's still ice cream. It's still the same brand in a way, because they're all the same sort of quality, except obviously if you go to the Asian ones, which is a different style entirely. But ultimately, a Western MMO, it's like deciding which flavor of Haagen-Dazs you want to pick.
That's funny. Definitely funny. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I don't think I would have probably even stuck with this game, because even the combat of things, it's Elder Scrolls. It's very Skyrim-esque, at least the first-person side of stuff, like when you're swinging your sword. But the combat isn't really, at least the one part of it being, the animation canceling part of it is something that is always kind of like, for me, is like, okay.
Yeah, I've never liked that. I mean, I do it because it's the only way you can do it to really be a decent end on the DPS and stuff, but it bothered me.
Yeah. And yeah, it just doesn't overall feel very good, I guess. So, all right. Let's see, where else are we going here? Oh man, they actually have. Should I? I feel like maybe no, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. I'm being brave, not doing it. They're doing IC, but I'm leveling up my handbag. I really enjoyed IC. Now, we recently did the Saga of Lucimia alpha. If the stream is still up there for people who actually want to watch it, we had a lot of fun with that. I know we're both really excited for that one because it's more of the tabletop game.
Yeah, very, very much so. There are things about that concern me, but I think a lot of it, they got their grand ideas, and until it really gets tested to see how it plays out. Because as someone who plays tabletop RPG, and in theory, yeah, great. I like the idea of using that as the base. But there are a lot of things that work when you're a group of people sitting around the table playing that I don't feel will work so well on the online world. There's a fine line between immersion and just being a damn pain in the ass. And so if you keep too close to the role-play tabletop, I fear there may be a bit of a clash.
Right. And this is actually a good conversation because I've actually only played like one tabletop game like ever. And it didn't even go that far. And I'm going to be completely frank. I was the coolest guy there, and I'm not really all that cool. So when I'm the coolest guy there, and I go, man, these guys are nerdy, that's a problem. I actually also think a lot of it was because the people who I was playing with were kind of more
gaming nerd pecking order.
Yeah, no, like I was definitely pretty awesome. But no, they were just like, I know there's idea of socially awkward, but these guys were like insanely socially awkward. Not just like nerdy socially awkward, just like really. And I'm like, okay, whatever, cool. But I don't know. Like I didn't quite get the appeal of it, I guess. I mean, the part that I enjoyed the most was the world building aspect. That was my favorite part of the entire thing, was just the world building. But once that was over and then we actually got to the point where it's like, okay, we're going to play now, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess, like, I don't know, like, maybe also the fact that we were playing at work, so we weren't able to get drunk. Maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, that's a big part of gaming on tabletop. Just Ish and chat. Yes, Saga of Lucimia is essentially, when it comes to combat, there's no single player. You need to be in a group. But you can do your sort of crafting stuff, obviously, alone. Although there are things you need other people for. But
okay, so like I was saying, my expertise with tabletop is limited. I enjoy Saga of Lucimia. I enjoy the people who are developing it. I enjoy the fact that they're doing something that seems to be very different, very group focused, very, I love that aspect. But when you're talking about the tabletop order of things, as just a general concern, what is so concerning?
Well, it's not necessarily just for example, obviously weight limit or very finite bag space. I don't know if you noticed in Lucimia, you can get about 3 things and you're kind of weighed down. Well, even the tabletop games are fairly generous in what you carry. If you're a high strength character, you are walking around with 10 long swords and 5 whatever, because it's done on weight rather than slots. Kind of like ESO. Well, ESO was actually slots, but I think one of the games used to be weight. I can't remember. But
yeah, a lot of Morrowind was weight. And every game had
Daggerfall was yeah.
Well, every game had weight because you could encumber yourself and then not be able to move, which was a pain in the butt. But yeah.
Yeah, so like even D&D, you can hold, if you're a high strength character, you could hold like 250 pounds and strolling around with that on your backpack, and there wasn't slot limits. And the way a role-playing game works, of course, you don't get. It's usually designed where you'll do the adventure, or whatever, you'll find the loot, etc., and you're usually able to. And then you travel back. You sort of the monologue, and then you travel back to town, and then you can sort your stuff out. Of course, in an MMO, which is all about long travel and stuff, but you can only hold like 5 items, and then you're already full, and it's an MMO, so loot drops a lot, and you need to keep it. You want to sell it to make money. That's a lot of back and forth, or having to leave a lot of loot behind.
Right.
I know they've got plans for caravan stuff, but of course that can get looted and raided as well. And if they're plan of having massive journeys between a dungeon and the overground, taking a long time, well, you saw how the walk speed is. I just think that will become micromanaging to the point. I mean, people found ESO annoying with its micromanagement of the inventory. I think if Saga's not careful, you will have an epic micromanage thing going on. I mean, again, it's early days, so they may have a great solution that might work, but just on the face of it, that's one of the things that kind of concerns me.
Right. No, I can see that. Definitely, I can see that, because some of their, like, I know they're following a lot of their core concepts, and we talk about that. I don't think it's going to be for everybody. It's not going to be for a lot of people.
The no soloing will knock out a huge crowd. I mean, even Pantheon gets a lot of negativity because it's a group-focused game. Right. But even they're aiming for more EQ1 style, so you could solo. It was slow, ineffective, but you weren't walking out the town and getting killed by a bear.
Right.
You could do some basic killing overland mobs, and if you're smart and depending on what class, you're quite effective. Grouping was always more efficient, which is, when it comes to MMO gamers, efficiency is what they're all about. So It works by making it more efficient. That's what people want to do. So single player aspect was merely the convenience that you weren't on for more than 20 minutes, so you're just going to pop on and kill a few things. So Pantheon's gone with that, and even now it gets a lot of people saying, oh no, group game, not interested. So Saga is quite brave, going, right, well, we're going to make a group game. And the crowd it gets will love it,
Oh, yeah.
Because it'll be no problem. And a lot of people do have friends, like, for instance, I always play pretty much as guaranteed a group of 4. It's me, my wife, my mate, and his wife now that we've got her into gaming. So you've got 4 people you can have in a group already. So there's things you can do. You don't have to have a full group in Saga, but you need some other people with you. And depending on how big your group, depends on what you can do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I mean... Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Pantheon at that same point, because it does kind of fit into this. I know pretty much at this point, like, I backed both Saga and Pantheon, but I've pretty much given up looking at Pantheon because, to be frank, both Saga of Lucimia and Pantheon are filling the same niche: PvE, group-focused MMOs, right? And I would much rather support the guys that I know, which, is the Stormhaven Studio people, and their passion project than Brad McQuaid and his drug addiction. Sorry.
Well, I'm greedy and I support both.
Yeah, well, there you go. That was a dark joke that I made, but it is the thing that was suggested.
It was suggested, yeah. I mean, the guy certainly had his demons back in the day, but. I don't know. But as I point out to people, they're like, "Oh, well, I wouldn't spoil that." It's like, well, I've played 2 of Brad's games. One was EverQuest, and one was Vanguard. Vanguard, the epic failure, I spent 2 years in. I spent longer in that than I have any other MMO aside from EQ1. So, if Brad's shits are something I can enjoy better than the games that cost hundreds of millions, then I'll support Pantheon, because I'll probably get a year or two's fun out of it, even if it did fail.
Mm-hmm. And what's I guess one of the things that's with Brad McQuaid and his game is the other game, the Vanguard, was very different from what I saw, was very different from EQ1. Like, it was more modern than...
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious why he's essentially just remaking EverQuest 1, because I know that's what people are saying. It's remaking EverQuest 1. At least Saga of Lucimia is trying to stick with what they said, the D100 role. Like, they are literally going tabletop, whereas Brad is just remaking EQ1. So you're going to see larger hit point pools. Maybe you're not going to see massive ones like we saw in... But it's just EQ1 with a new skin because he no longer owns the EverQuest license.
I disagree with that. From what I've seen, the dream would be it's obviously EQ1 and Vanguard have a baby. Because, as I say, Vanguard had a lot of things, was a very different game to EQ1. So they're now using EQ1 as the baseline. But I think people will be surprised. I think people who really do expect EQ1 in all its form, just with new graphics, will probably end up being quite disappointed, actually. I just think, I could be wrong, maybe it does just go from there, but they're very keen to try and suggest people, look, it's not just remaking EQ1. Not that necessarily be a problem, because why you say, why he's just making a new old game again. EQ1, of course, 1999 that was made. it was limited by technology. So going by the same theory of a baseline of EQ1, but being able to use a much more modern... I mean, take his... I know one thing that you really didn't like the idea of, take no instancing for raiding. Oh, that's not going to work because it was crap in EQ1. Well, yeah, it was, but in EQ1 it was literally someone kills it, it's gone for 7 days. But the stuff you can do nowadays, you could have the mob die and respawn instantly, but of course people who've killed it are locked out of it for a week, or that's just one idea. But there's so many ways they can do it, and people fear it because in EQ1 it was a terrible idea. But with technology how it is, you could really remake the game to a great standard using modern technology. I'm hoping it does more than just a replica, but we'll see. If it was a replica, I'd still play it.
Like you're saying, some of the people who are talking about like EQ1 or whatever with the 7 days or timeout, people enjoy that because guilds actually monopolized entire sections of the game because of that feature. Like if you said about them locking out loot and stuff, I think you would really tick off a lot of the EQ1 people.
What if you made it?
If you remove that whole once every 7 day kind of thing.
You will, but the people you'll tick off will literally be the 0.1% who actually enjoyed that. You even get them on the Reddit now occasionally say, oh yeah, I like doing that. I like the 3 day fucking spawn times on a creature. It's like, what? Why would you want to have that in the game? Having to sit around for 3 days, it may or may not spawn sometime in 72 hours. But there's some people who actually genuinely like that. And I think, as Ish actually mentions in the chat about a problem with some old school is they're using the wrong mechanics, and that only exists because the game couldn't cope with better. I think that's the important thing I hope Prad works out and even the players need to realize there are some things that are old school and they worked because they encouraged community, they encouraged this and that, and they encouraged group gameplay, and they were great. There were other mechanics that were just in there because limited resources or just a bit of clumsy codings. As I say, giving monsters 72-hour respawn time might drop what you need is a great way of elongating the game, a very lazy way. But there are some people who still generally like those aspects that most people would say, no, this is the crap we don't want carried over. So there's the danger. It depends what they bring over. If they end up bringing up the good with the crap, then it could go horribly wrong.
I don't know, but from everything I see, it doesn't look like... Frankly, it doesn't look like he is learning from what he had before. I seen some of the fights. It very much is the old school MMO that looks like EverQuest 1, to be honest.
Well, yeah, but on that aspect, I'd say the same with Saga. I mean, yeah, you call it a different dice roll and stuff, but ultimately it looks, and if you're watching on from far, it's basically monsters with way too many hit points and just a group of you sitting around hitting it. But similar to Saga's early days, you have to bring in mechanics, and if you don't, then it's just, you end up with a very disappointing set. But that's one of the difficulties both Saga and Pantheon actually had. If you're encouraging grouping, or forcing it in some cases, what do you do with the mobs? Because you can't have every mob having real clever mechanics like a boss, because they're trash mobs. I mean, look at ESO, for example. You ruffle stomp your way through without even caring, just slice, dead. And if you want to make it a group version, it's going to have more hit points. But if you're just putting all hit points, that's going to make it kind of dull. So it is a heck of a challenge to try and work out. And I know that they want to put in clever monsters with, ones that are runners, so they run away and try and find more friends, others who call for more friends, others who go directly for the healer. So you're putting simple mechanics where you can't just go, right, we're going to tank and spank this, because the monster sort of completely ignores your tank and goes straight for the cleric. So you have to adjust your tactics to deal with it. So there's things they can do, and they are planning on putting in. Obviously, in the early stream they're doing now, it's pretty much just all they have, because hell, most of the characters don't really have any skills or many skills, so it really is just, here's lots of hit points and we're auto attacking.
Yeah, definitely feels like that's what it is right now. I don't know.
And I think a key thing to remember is the reality is tab target games are very boring to watch. It's just a reality. I mean, think how much fun we had in Saga of Lucimia running around killing those monsters. But if you're watching it on the stream, you're thinking, oh, great, so you're all sent. You don't see the intricacies going on in the combat, the healing, the moving around and doing things. And that makes it more exciting. You don't realize you're just hitting a giant pinata. to get the loot.
You're right. That is very true. There is something to be said for actual playing MMOs, and this is actually pretty much all the time. MMOs are normally not very fun to watch. It's actually why, like, even on Twitch right now, you'll see we don't have tons of viewers, because they're not as fun to watch as they are to play. But yeah,
I mean, and add to that again, while we're doing the saga, part of the reason it was so fun, even though it's just monsters with more hit points than you'd normally get in a single player MMO, it was the fun, it was the banter, it was just the group talking, and that's where the fun comes from. I know it was extra fun because obviously we're talking about ideas of the game, but even when you're just with your mates, you don't actually get that in modern MMOs, because when you do a dungeon, if you do get your friends, you're still probably trying to do it in 15 minutes or whatever, because it's a dungeon with a very set, here's the start, here's the finish, let's get it done. Whereas in the Saga and the Pantheon EverQuest one, I think you're meandering. You're not in a rush to get anywhere particular. You might want to try and get to an area where you think a name spawns, but ultimately you're just traveling through, chatting, killing, and that social aspect just comes out naturally. Right.
And I mean, that's going into when you said about I'm trying so hard to figure out where I'm at right now. You said about the social aspect, and actually I was listening to a podcast from somebody who was talking about specifically Brad McQuaid, because I don't even know if they know about Saga, or if they do, they're not really following a lot. But one of the things that they brought up, which I thought was very interesting, is they were saying why are people trying to bring back like this old school, the socializing, because it's different because of how the world is now. Once upon a time, finding your players in game was the only way to really do these things once upon a time. But now it's not that way. Like, you have Discord, you have all these third-party programs, which I'm not necessarily super fond of. Like, I like the idea that you get in game to talk to people, because then you go and do stuff with your friends, which I think is very important. But they were trying to make the argument that because of this, why are you trying to bring down the quote-unquote, what does Brad call it, design downtime? Is that
design downtime.
Yeah, he's like, why would you design downtime?
Oh, I'm a big fan of downtime. That was the getting rid of downtime was the killer of the social aspect. That's why you run dungeons and no one's there to talk, because anytime you're talking, you're not getting on with the dungeon, unless you're on the Skype, of course, where you can do a bit of both. Mm-hmm. But if it was strangers, if you get into looking for group match, how often do you even get a hello from anyone? It's just
this is
not
true.
there.
No, I agree. It makes sense.
And people say, it's archaic. There's no point. As I say, they've got Discord and stuff to make groups, and yet looking for group tool always seems to be very popular. Well, I say popular. It seems to be well used in games. So obviously people aren't setting their groups up in the Discord prior to it. Rather than pre-planning, you kind of like to pop into the game and then put groups together. And especially if it means grouping with, like, one of my favorite aspects used to be grouping with strangers. I love whereas nowadays people hate it. They get in a pug, they complain the guy's too slow, his gear's not good enough, or whatever. Whereas nowadays you'd be in a group of 4, and then someone would say, hey, I'm looking for a group. It's like, well, we don't really need him, but we've got space. So yeah, come on in. And they'd come in, they'd come join us and play for a few hours. And that's another thing. When someone joined your group, you were probably playing for a few hours together. Not necessarily. Some people might be half an hour, then they have to go, or an hour. But the group itself might be a rolling group. So it starts with the group in an area, and you've got 6 people, and as people disappear, and for those who are hardcore, that is, who manage to do, I say hardcore, for those who have the time, I should say, because I hate the term hardcore. So if someone is playing for 5 hours, they might actually be in a group and start it. And by the end of the night, when they're logging off, the other 5 people with them are completely different people, because you've cycled throughout the evening. And you meet a load of different people, add a load of people to your friends list. Some people add to your guild. Like, for instance, my guilds, I pretty much don't invite anyone I haven't grouped with. I don't like empty recruiting. I have to group with them to see if they're compatible. And I don't mean compatible because they reach X amount of DPS in X amount of seconds. I want to know, are they an ass? So, can they appreciate that we're pretty relaxed and have a laugh and don't do things that the way most people do? I mean, like, even our raids, we used to do open Skype. In Rift, we'd have 20 people on Skype, not push to talk, and you'd hear everything: burps, farts, drinking, laughing, jokes, and we'd be raiding like that. You know, and people are like, how the hell could you possibly? We got it done. Hell, we even got some server firsts, but we had a laugh doing it.
Kind of agree. How in the world did you do that? But yeah, no, that's cool.
Well, yeah, that's funny because we used to get sometimes our good didn't know, so we'd have 15 people, and then we'd invite 5 strangers to fill up the group. So we'd have complete random people come and join us, and they were in for the shock of their life. As they're like, what is going on? I mean, you know, some of the bosses we fight, I say, right, it'd be one line. I say, right, this guy DPSs when he starts, hits the tank, when he starts running, shit yourself and get the hell away from there, and then we go in. So that's it. That's the mechanics. I'll explain more while we're fighting. And then we just go in and do it. It's like worst prep ever for a raid.
I mean, I've done that a lot of times with some of our guild too, just because that was something fun to do where, you know, you go in blind with a bunch of your friends without looking up videos or anything and just see what happens. And a lot of hilarity tends to ensue from that.
Oh, well, quite often I'd know what was going on. It's just I've learned a raid can be very boring when you stand there and for 10 minutes say, right, this boss here, and you just go through it all, and you go through the instructions, and that this phase at 35%, or at 60%, and at 15%, this, that, and the other will happen. And if you remember just listening to that, you get about the first 30 seconds into that, and all you start hearing is blah, 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 blah. And so I prefer just to shout out the instructions as we go along. So I have a few people who get designated roles to give out and lead people and give instructions, and we just go in there that way. The prep is the 30 seconds so they know what the initial part of the fight is, and then we'll just wing it. But we're winging it in the way that the leaders know what happens. It's just when the members are kind of there to sort of work on the fly, because people tend to react much better to an instruction given to them there and then than they do sort of being expected to remember the whole spiel before the fight started.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've definitely been there, especially with the rating aspect of things. And yeah, after the first couple hours, you're just like, all right, I get it, you know. Can we move on now, please? I guess that'd be great. I guess that's however you want to do it. I don't know. Like, I've never really had too many issues. I mean, we've had a few issues here and there with some guild members and stuff like that with the community. But because of the DCN community, and they know, they know at least of my personality from the shows. And
I was going to say it's a bit different. You know, yours is like I'd had an open invite when I was doing the Tales with you. I had an open invite for people to join our guild from the DCN, because, as you say, people knew you. You know, the kind of people who are watching the podcast are already the kind of people you know. If they like the podcast, they're probably going to be quite happy in the guild. So it was a calculated risk that I had no problem with, because it kind of made sense. I knew the people that joined were unlikely to be the elitist hardcore guys who just make other people miserable.
Right.
You know, it's just not really the kind of community you got. So.
And I mean, yeah, you're right. Fine. We didn't even do sections where we're, you know, talking about hardcore of this or whatever. So, you know, the people who were coming in generally didn't have that same mentality, because, you know, like you said, we spoke a certain way, we talked about our tales a certain way, which gave people an idea of how we actually played the game, and then we got mostly like-minded people.
I mean, you always get the odd bag egg who turns up, but even if you group people first, it happens, you know. It might not even be that they're bad egg, it's just the way they interact with some other people, there's a friction. You know, that's an inevitable fact of people getting together. But, you know, that's a fact I like, people getting together. That's why I'm playing an MMO.
Right. I mean, community is one of my favorite parts, too. It's why we run the community that we have, why we do what we do here. And it's a lot of it is because we have a community. Like, whenever we're going into games, for like Saga of Lucimia, I know I'll have a group when I go into that. Ashes of Creation, we're putting together a guild for that, where we're running into that game, and I know I have people who are gonna be ready to, you know, just jump in when we're ready to start. And that's always something that is really awesome. We have this awesome community that has formed up kind of around us and what we do. So, you know, it's one of my favorite parts of playing games. because I know even prior to doing the stream, even though I'm running around solo at the moment, I'm talking to you at this point. But one of the things, like with Dark Souls, that was one game that I was trying to figure out if I wanted to start up and do again, is while I enjoy it for its gameplay side of view, I always feel weird with single player games because I like the community aspect of MMOs. I always have.
Aside from Zelda on the Switch, I haven't played a single player game for probably a decade. I just can't do it. And anytime I do it, I think I could be an MMO. Even the amount of complaining I'm doing about MMOs being too single player oriented, and I think that's terrible and blah, 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 blah. I still have to go back to them because even in the most guilty of soloed MMOs, there's still going to be people, and I will still find a guild. And I don't think a guild is necessarily the solution, because I know a lot of people say, oh no, any game's fine, you just got to find the right guild. I want it bigger than that. I want a world where the people who aren't in your guild are people you interact with, but at the very worst I will settle for interaction with just my guild, because that's still a lot more than I get from a single player game, which is why I just cannot play them.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it definitely does. And one of the things with MMOs that I always like is the fact that everything you do, I feel like with single player games I tend to, I feel like I'm wasting time.
That's it. Every hour you spend a single player game, you think, oh, I could have got something done on my MMO.
Well, yeah. And not only that, but I don't know. And I guess we know right now that MMOs aren't necessarily forever. We've seen our fair share of MMOs that have been shuttered and sunset and stuff like that. But more often than not, when you play an MMO, you know that character's going to be there going forward, right? Like anything you do, you are advancing even a maxed out character in terms of power progression or gear or anything like that. Just by playing the game, you're still advancing your character, even if it's something as simple of, I earned more money, so now I'm richer as a player, right? Like, you're advancing and continuing on a story, or continuing the story of your character, even if the quote-unquote story aspects of the game are already over.
Yeah, I mean, I say, like, if you run out of things to do, you're still making money, and so you know eventually an expansion's going to come up, and if you've got the money saved, it means you might be able to get an item quicker than you would have otherwise. There's just that potential is there, whereas in a single player game, sort of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously a lot of people would disagree, but I'm an MMOer, and so that's a big aspect to me. Is and again, if I've got nowhere to progress, but I might have some friends on there, and they're not as far as I am, they need to get some dungeons done. Well, I'll go help them out. They need to get a particular bit of loot. Cool. That's something. It gives me a task to do, which I wouldn't have otherwise, because I've finished, as it were. Right. Makes a difference.
Now, here's a game that, like, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about, because I know you and I we've interacted. You're kind of like, how do I want to describe that? Whenever I say Asteldian, I feel like you are our old school MMO consultant, if you will, because those are the games that you tend to play the most. Like, even when you and I were talking, you were saying you were playing EQ1 or Project 99, and I'm sitting there scratching my head going, I got about 20 minutes into that, and that's about as far as I got.
Yeah.
Not that I haven't played old MMOs like that before. I played Ultima Online and stuff like that. I think my hardest part is knowing that emulators, I have a hard time playing emulators, because it's like, well, technically speaking, this could be shut down tomorrow if somebody at daybreak gets a bug up their butt and decides to go after these people legally, you know.
No, they got legit permission.
Well, I think they're one of the few that have legit permission. Yeah, but it's still and another part of that is, okay, this is still being run by fans or whatever. What happens if they decide, because it's like donations, what happens if the server dies? Like, are they going to have the funds to build another one? You know, like, those things tend to keep me out of those games. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more had I known there was a future to it. Like, I can tell you what, I definitely tried the EQ franchise when we didn't know anything about these other games like Saga of Lucimia, Pantheon. I think, well, maybe we did know about Pantheon. But EverQuest Next, right? What the EverQuest that was. I can tell you I tried to get into EQ1 and EQ2 specifically because I wanted to know more about Norath, the world itself. And I went from a lore perspective, wanting to know about Norath. And so I kind of tried to hop into those, going, okay, maybe, and another reason, maybe they're going to try to do something like what Guild Wars 2 did when Guild Wars 2 came out. They were like, hey, if you happen to have been playing Guild Wars 1 all this time, which I wasn't, but I went in afterwards and did a lot of stuff, until the game launches, you can earn cosmetic rewards for your Guild Wars 2 character. So what did I do? I bought all the expansions for Guild Wars and went through all of that.
Yeah, you're a sucker for that kind of stuff.
I really am. I love cosmetics and things to show off from the other games. So... And I thought that was a nice way to tie it in because it also got me to know the lore of the world. So I tried to hop into EQ and EQ2 back when, because I was one of those guys who backed EverQuest Next. That was $100 down the drain. But because now I don't even have Landmark anymore. They shut that down too.
I was going to say that's some serious optimism.
Yeah, well.
But at the end of the day, and I know the miserable folks at MMORPG always like, oh, everything's going to fail, everything sucks, all these crap games coming out, don't give them the money, you're an idiot. At the end of the day, AAA companies aren't making the game I want, so the only way to really get anywhere is to put my money on those who I have faith in, or I have hope in, I should say. And so I certainly don't fault anyone. If you've got the money, if you don't support these games, they're definitely not going to come out. So
yeah. I mean, no, I've definitely done that myself. Like, we were talking about Ashes of Creation and Saga of Lucimia. I've backed all of these because like you said, they're not making the games that I'm going to want to play. These AAA studios are just doing the whole same cash grab stuff. And I mean, even ESO started to get to that point where it just feels like a cash grab constantly in order to get... as much money out of their player base as possible, because one of the things I know that we were talking about was Elder Scrolls 6. Like, why aren't they going to do Elder Scrolls 6? I'm like, why would they? That would be stupid, because the second they do Elder Scrolls 6, 90% of their player base is going to disappear out of ESO, because so many of us that are here are fans of the franchise more than the MMO, and they're going to go to where Elder Scrolls 6 is, and this is going to be a ghost town.
Yeah, but to be fair, I think it's worse. It's worse than that, isn't it? Those bastards have been milking Skyrim for how many years? How many versions does that come out now? And I just got one on the damn Switch, so I've been suckered into it. I can justify it by saying I've never actually bought it before. But why would they make a 6 when they're still reproducing the same damn game and somehow selling it plenty of copies again and again and again? Even if ESO didn't exist, I start to wonder whether or not they'd really be trying in earnest to make a 6.
But yeah, you're right. It does make sense, because they've been milking Skyrim like crazy for many a year. We're waiting on Elder Scrolls 6, but they still haven't released, Skyrim XXX Super Duper Edition yet.
The remastered edition.
Yeah. Skyrim Remastered, Part 2. And Isha in chats, I would buy a Swift, I'm assuming she means Taylor Swift, or a Switch just for Skyrim. And I think some people have done that. I know when they first showed the Switch off and they showed Skyrim on it, people are like, did they just do that because it's Skyrim? There's no way they're going to put Skyrim on the Switch. I'm actually surprised they put Skyrim on the Switch, because the power of that machine is just not there. It's not a very powerful machine.
It's more than people give it credit for. I mean, yeah, it is certainly weaker, but, clever, as we've proved with Skyrim. Clever, and I know it's not a game, but even then people thought there's no way it'd run. A bit of clever thinking and clever bit of optimization, it works. Same with other games. I mean, they've got some games that are even... It lands between a PS3 and 4, but they've got some games that have gone from PS4 onto it, or plan to, and it just takes a lot of clever adjustments, or just accepting the fact that it is going to be downscaled. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I got to admit, even though most people seem to hate it, I'm a sucker for the motion controls. That to me is why I play Skyrim on the Switch. So the idea of turning off the motion controls seems crazy to me. I'm like, well, that's half the fun, isn't it?
I guess.
I mean, otherwise, why would you have it on the Switch? Well, because you obviously can carry it around, which is awesome. But otherwise, if you don't like motion controls,
Yeah, you carry it around with its 2-hour battery life.
So, no, I think 6 hours is the average.
Really?
I wouldn't know. I would know. Sadly, I've never even taken it off the dock to play portable. That's how bad I am. I got a Switch and it just.
I got this portable that never moves, so that kind of reminds me of when I first bought my first like gaming computer. I'm like, I'm gonna buy a gaming laptop, because then I can take it places and go to LAN parties. Until after I bought it and I realized how few LAN parties I actually went to, I could have just bought a desktop and carried it around for the amount of times I actually moved the darn thing.
Yeah, that's the way of it.
Yeah, I specifically remember that point. Oh, I'll buy the laptop so when I go to parties and stuff like that, I can bring it with. And then I realized I don't go to that many parties. And I remember having some people come over to my house, and I'm sitting there going, okay, bring your computers or whatever. And people just pack their desktops up, and I'm sitting there going, at first I'm like, wow, maybe, that seems a little much. But then I'm like, it's actually not that big of a deal. Like, I sat there and thought about it. I'm like, it's really not a lot of cables and stuff. Like, it's not this big of a deal to actually just do what you need to do, right?
Yeah, no, I had friends pop around to mine. They just bring their PCs along. The hardest part's the heft of it, really. Other than that, it's not a problem.
Yeah, but it's not like you're carrying it around constantly. You carry it to your car, you put it in your car, you carry it to where you're going, and then there you go. You're done. Like,
exactly.
You got 2 hefts, period, and that's whatever. And that was something I discovered. It's like, wow, I don't need the laptop. I didn't get really much more mobility out of it because I didn't really do a whole lot that was different with it. So I always just go with the desktop now. It's like, yeah, if I am going somewhere that I need to bring my laptop, I've moved them in the past. What's one more?
Yeah, exactly. If you're planning on gaming with it, then you take it. If you're not, just take a tablet.
Yeah, right. I don't know. That's kind of my thought of it.
But,
as Isha says, my laptop has never once moved off my desk. It's like, yeah, that team seems to be the consensus. So, what are your thoughts on Ashes of Creation? We already talked the old school MMOs.
Funny enough, I was going to ask what it is about Ashes of Creation that's got you so hyped up, because you're in this 150%. You're around. And I'm just curious, because I'm not that. I'm not interested. I'm just like, well, I haven't seen anything particularly. Oh yeah, I want this.
The thing that actually has me most interested in it is actually the idea of the evolving world where cities and stuff will level up as players are actually doing stuff in it, and the government of it, like the players will actually run the governments of the cities that are going up. You can siege the cities and destroy them completely. Gear that actually breaks is something that's fascinating for me, so that crafters will actually have a purpose once again, because gear will break. Those are some of the big things that really excite me about it.
Yeah, that'll be why I'm not that intrigued. Not that I've got anything against their ideas of the player cities, etc. It's just, for me, it's hitting an ambition, which I just have that horrible feeling that it's very ambitious goals, like great if you can do them, but it ends up either having to be sort of dragged back in something kind of similar but not quite comes out, which ends up disappointing people. So I guess my concern of it is they've got some impressive thoughts, but they're so ambitious. Call me a skeptic, but I'm not convinced they'll come out as hoped. I remember when Rift, back in the day when it was being designed, I know, to be fair, Treon isn't like the greatest company for having a reputation, but the idea of the Rifts were going to be like the ideas of permanently changing the world, so like a village might not be there anymore or something. But people didn't even like that aspect when they started playing. Oh no, I logged out and I came back in, it's all gone changed. So they dial back, and then of course they realize how hard it is to implement it to actually be sort of random or whatever. And so when a game gets it right, I'm sure it'll hit the top. I just don't know if the world is ready for it to come out. I mean, EQ Next had all these grand ambitions as well, and that went down the toilet. And I hate weapons breaking. So that's really off-putting for me.
I think you might still be kind of soured on that because you've been playing so much of Zelda with the weapon breaking. It won't be that bad, but yeah, I think you.
No, well, my issue with breaking comes from the idea. I mean, in crafting terms, it's like, oh yeah, it'd be really great, but in terms of adventuring ways, it's like, well, what am I adventure? Because you like to adventure for loot. One of the problems ESO had was you could craft for ages. You could craft pretty much the best combos you needed. So the dungeoning and stuff kind of seemed irrelevant, aside from sort of trying to do something for the sake of doing something. And I see the same problem here. If things break, you're not going to work your ass off for that particularly badass item, or you are, and then that thing's going to break on you. You're like, oh.
You will be able to repair it though. Like,
oh, so it's not really broken. You just get a craft repair.
Well, it's broke. They've actually said like for like the rare items, like the raid items, when you get that awesome weapon or whatever, you'll be able to actually repair it. It may cost more than the cost of a normal weapon and things like that, but you'll need to repair it. And it's not just repair it with gold or whatever. You actually need materials, and you may even need a specific, like if you had the Thunder Fury, for instance, from WoW, in order for you to go back and do to get it, you may have to go back and do that one raid where the Elementium dropped and get Elementium ore to repair it. So it's not, it will actually probably bring dungeons back into it. Like people will run dungeons for, oh, I have a sword or whatever. Well, I'm going to run this dungeon a few times so I stock up on the rare ore that comes from it. So that way when my item breaks, I can have it repaired by a smith.
Okay, I can live with that idea. I just had this horrible thought of, okay, great, I got this item, which will sit in my backpack, except for whenever I raid, because God forbid I use it any other time, because I don't want it broken. Yeah, I was like, no, that just wouldn't work for me. Yeah,
no, items will break, and for average items or legendary-ish items, it probably will just be more feasible just to have multiple items ready to go, right? Think of it in terms of Breath of the Wild, right, where a lot of your other weapons will break, and you had multiple weapons with you, but the Master Sword never broke. It just needed to recharge. But think of the recharge as something like you need a smith or a player crafter to actually do.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, I could get on board with that sort of idea.
The other thing that really excites me, and this is something that I've always said, if a game allowed me to or like my perfect game would actually just be an updated Ultima Online, is something that I really wanted to see. And they actually have a karma PvP system in place where you can kill anybody. It's like a free-for-all PvP, but if you kill someone who's not a combatant, means you actually gain corruption and can actually lose gear, you can lose skill, all sorts of stuff. So like you can be a murdering character if you want, but you have to accept the problem for doing it, right?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of PvP in my open world. I love the theory of PvP, and I love the fact that that's the best way to get real combat, but that's only on the once in a blue moon you actually find the combat, rather than just someone being a dick. And even though Online had plenty of them, hell, one of my friends is one of the shameless dicks from that game. I'm like, dude, you're such an asshole. And yeah, you just can't stop it, and that can be enough just to ruin someone's day, or just their game entirely if it constantly happens. Let's face it, there's no shortage of people who want to be assholes.
Well, this is true.
Maybe the system will work, but I've yet to see one that really hasn't got a workaround or a case of, well, that's fine. Because if they're going to let you become criminal type people, there's got to be a way of playing like that. So I think in Ultima Online's case, there was a certain village you could go to, or whatever. And so, if you're putting things in so you can go that route, then that means the aisle is wide open for someone to take advantage and just be a pain in the ass.
Oh, I definitely think there will be, but at the same time, they're planning on doing a bounty hunter system, which is anyone who is a murderer, you can put bounties on them, and players will be able to hunt them down and get rewards. It'll be its own play type to hunt down PKers and kill them off. And of course, like I said, they have a much higher death cost. The idea of when you die, there is a death penalty. It being very severe for players who kill other players outside of combat zones like sieges and stuff where everyone's considered a combatant is very much something that is fascinating for me. I love the idea of... Haven't there ever been times where like you've been playing a game and you have that jerk who's being a jerk for no greater reason, like the guy sitting on top of the mailbox or something like that, and you can't get by and he won't move, being able to go, fine, and just kill him. I would do that. I would accept the murder penalty for a couple hours or having to do a redemption quest to kill that annoying guy who's trolling me by sitting on top of the mailbox.
Oh yeah, there's definitely upsides to it. I just feel the downsides too much. I just find, and I'll be hated for this, but I'm not a big fan of the PvP community in general.
Right. I think it's going to be very fascinating, and I know there are people. It's actually funny. There's a few people in our community, partly. I mean, they have their own communities, obviously, but who are talking about, they're so interested in Ashes of Creation, but they're interested from a PvE only aspect. And they're like, I don't have to do PvP if I don't want to. I'm going to find a community where we don't PvP. And it's like, okay, but you're part of a server. You're not going to be able to escape it completely. And I think it's kind of funny to see the illusion on some people's heads of them going, hey, I'm not going to PvP. Like, I'm just going to, I'm like, okay, fine. You don't have to, but you're in this type of game with the way it's designed, and even with the idea of cities and stuff like that, the idea is the rising and falling of civilizations. Name me a civilization that has actually survived the entire way through without someone going, I want what they have, and now I'm going to destroy them to get it. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, there's a post on the MMORPG forum where someone was listing the games coming out in 2018 and 19, and most of them had PvP by them, and people were arguing saying, that's not a PvP game because you can PvE in it, and this one same here and there. I was like, well, you don't really... I said, to be fair, PvP's is pretty much a case of, if it's an open world PvP system, it's a PvP game. It might not be the focus of the game, but once it's there, to most PvEers, it's a PvP game because they want it not at all. And so if it's an open aspect, if it's not limited to a battlegrounds or a certain big zone or whatever, and it's pretty much open, it's a PvP game as far as they're concerned. Even if PvE is the focus, once you add that element of PvP in, people who don't like PvP strongly don't like PvP.
Right. Yep. And I don't think that everyone's gonna like that game just because, like you said, you could be out there picking flowers, mind your own business, and someone can come up and stab you. So, Yeah,
I don't think my wife would play. I could play that, but yeah, she's not a fan of the PvP side of things.
No, I don't think my wife really is either, but I know she's going to play with us because as part of our community, that's what we do. We protect our community. So I know that's something I'm really excited to see with how we're setting stuff up. But yeah. So moving off of that, here's another game that's going to be kind of fun I wanted to talk about. Have you heard about Chronicles of Elyria?
I have vaguely heard about Chronicles.
All right. So let's talk about Chronicles for a minute. Chronicles was actually a game that went to its Kickstarter before Ashes, and honestly, the thing that kind of turned me off the most from it was the fact that they only had human races. Is that weird? Because that's kind of what my biggest problem was. They only have human. I love my dwarves, and yeah, I generally only play a human, but I love my fantasy races, and this one didn't really have that. They have a very unique system in place, though. Right now, there's a lot of controversy going on about it because they don't really have a lot of lore for the world because they are allowing people to essentially purchase kingdoms. Like, is the whole idea of this game is ruling these kingdoms and, having a dynasty. Your characters actually age and die, and then you bequeath what you earned in life or whatever to your descendants, right? So it's definitely a game of dynasties rather, like, and they even describe the game as, don't think of it as playing just one character, think of it as playing a dynasty, because that's what you're going to be doing. Because when your character dies, you're essentially going to re-roll it as a new character that is going to be your descendants, but they're not going to have everything, right? Like, if you were a master swordsman, it doesn't necessarily mean your child is. Now, they may pick it up because you may have trained them, but they're going to be slightly lower than that. And the other thing that's very fascinating is with that, your character's dying, there is permadeath. And every time that you die, like in game, it's permadeath to an extent. It's not like some of the super hardcore where you die once and it's over. You actually lose a bit of your life force, and their payment model is they're trying to bring back the old arcade, pay for extra lives, where you buy a spark of life, and that's how you continue your game or create a new character. And each spark of life, they're saying, is going to last for about 1 year. But every time you die, you lose like 2 days off of that time for your character, right? And that also depends upon how high in the hierarchy your character is. A lowly serf will have like the full year or whatever, but if you're a king, your time you may only be able to die one time, and you've lost your character, and you'd have to buy a new spark of life. What are your thoughts on that?
That sounds a bit extreme to me, because funny enough, I know Pantheon's talking about having its progeny system, and this idea that you can retire a character and start a new one and gain some benefits. And of course, the big fears everyone pushed out was, oh well, if they're too powerful, then it's going to force people to do that. If they're not powerful enough, why would anyone do that? The idea of a game having your characters die, you're not really having much choice of it, and actually then literally dying because they've died in combat or something. That sounds a bit... Is it real money you have to spend?
Yes.
Ooh. How much are these sparks?
$30.
Bloody hell.
Well,
that's,
now, if you think about it, though, all right, let's go for it at the idea that you are a lowly serf with 1 year's worth of time. That the average life of a character would be 1 year for $30, unless you really suck as a person and die a bunch, and because it's more or less risky. Because when you die, it kind of enters this weird astral projection phase, I guess, where you have to make your way back to your body. And if you do that, you lessen the death penalty for actually dying. But yeah, like the $30 for a year-ish is really not a lot. But it's as you die and you're losing it, you're going to be buying these sparks of life a lot more frequently than that.
Yeah.
Especially if you are in the ruling monarchy, you lose more because you're more valuable of a person. So their lore reason is it takes more life force to bring you back because of how strong of a person you were. You need more life force than the average person, I guess. I don't know. whatever their lore reason is, but that's the idea of they want to bring back the idea that political assassinations actually mean something.
Yeah, they mean $30 down the drain.
Yeah, right?
It's a bit too gambling for my taste, I'll be honest with you. The idea of putting in a year, maybe only getting a day,
right,
or anything in between.
Anything in between. Yeah, it's definitely very fascinating of a concept, and it's definitely a different business model than pretty much anything else I've seen so far.
Yeah, very true. It's certainly intriguing. It wouldn't be for me, but I could see maybe how people would like it. But I don't know the idea of my character sort of having to move on to the next one.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my problem too. It's like, and the weird part is when you you couldn't even control 100% what they look like, because it kind of randomly generates a character. At least this is what they originally said they were going to be doing, is it generates a character based off of the combination of both parents, right? Which makes sense. I mean, that's how kids work. I have a child, and while I think he looks a lot like me, he does have parts that looks like his mother, like the fact that he has a dimple on his cheek. Like, that's something that I don't have, but his mother has two. He has one on one cheek, and it's really cute. But you know, that idea is not too terribly uncommon.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, no, I don't think I'd like that. It's a restricted character choice. It's all look selection. A character dying and we have to spend $30 on it to bring it back, or just being dying and we have to get another character. Well, you know, we just talked earlier about the single-player games feel like a waste because your character's finite. Well, that's my problem with the idea of moving on to the next character, as it were. It's the same problem if it dies, and that's not really that different from the single player issue of I got to the end, now I've got to start again.
Right.
So, but it's definitely out there, and you know, I'd sooner that than a cash shop model. So,
well, I mean,
I prefer a sub, but I would probably prefer a spark of life than cash shops. But I also concerned. I mean, people talk about EverQuest 1 or even Pantheon having the harsh death penalties of losing experience and corpse runs, and saying, oh, it discourages people from exploring or taking risks. I disagree with that, because I don't think that, while they're inconvenient, it never really got in the way of me doing something stupid. But the idea of money being on the line, I could see playing a very cautious game.
And, I mean, I don't know. Like, is that really a problem? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't see... so many times when people talk about MMOs, though, like they talk about these games and stuff like, oh, it'd be really great if I could do this or whatever the case may be, but with no risk, there's no real reward for anything, right? That's the whole risk versus reward. With being a king and then knowing that you have all this power, you know, whether it's system power or whatever, because you are a king, to control entire game worlds, maybe get insanely rich as a dynasty because you're able to tax everyone that goes into your own personal pocket, you know, like, is that worth the extra risk?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm going to say risk and reward, I'm all for it within the game terms, and I thought it worked perfectly in Q1 because it was painful. If you got a couple of deaths in a row, you could lose hours, you know. And so it was dangerous, but you still went and delved into that dungeon or went further than you should. But I was saying, money on the line? Hell, if I was a king, I'd bought my $30, I probably wouldn't even log in. I'd be like, right, I'll log out, I'm staying out, I'll be alive for most of this year. So God forbid I should go in, set something up real quick, then camp out, and that's it. I mean, you know, $30.
Yeah.
The only kind, I think the only kind of people who'd be able to do that are the sort of people who are the whales and free-to-play games, where it means nothing, so they could throw $30 at a time and without an issue. And if that's the case, that kind of takes away the risk consequence there and then, because they're the ones who don't really care, because $30 is nothing.
Right.
Which one-off isn't, you know, in the grand scheme of things. But, you know, if you do that a few times...
Right. it racks up quickly. So now here's another fun question at this point then. Let's talk about these whales. One of the controversies that's going on right now is, hold on, let me pull it up here. I have to pull up the thing, what they're talking about right now. And I actually think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play the video. I know you're not going to actually be able to see it on stream. Actually, maybe give me a second. Maybe I'll figure this out. They actually have a video in place, and it's neat because one of the things they're doing is they brought the community into it. But one of the controversies of this whole thing is that they're essentially, I told you earlier, they haven't done a whole lot with lore of the world because they want each server to be different. So they're actually having these weird in lore or in universe contests that involve their, I want to say cash shop, but let's not call it a cash shop because it's not a release game. Let's call it a funding store. Things that you'll be able to buy credits and stuff like that to help fund the game, right? Think Star Citizen and them buying ships and things like that. So I don't want to call it a cash shop yet. Let's just say it's their pre-order store or whatever. They're able to buy these credits called influence points. And what they're doing is they're choosing the kingdoms, like the kingdoms that are being named in the lore and written into the lore right now for servers are actually player-run kingdoms. So like of Elyria. So they have these player-run kingdoms. Is that the one? No, that is not the video I want. So you have these player-run kingdoms. Oops, is this it? No, that's not it. Snow Tech previews. Sorry, I'm just trying to find this one thing. Ah, there it is. The Free Kingdoms of Elyria lore. I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this. And let's see if I can put this on stream right now. Give me 1 second. Still there, Asteldian? Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, let's do browser source. Definitely, nope, not that. Because that's apparently the last thing I used. Let's do this.
In the year 671 of the Fourth Age, the deranged king began his...
I'm not done. I wanna fix this. Add a crop filter. Crop. Oh, and great. Now because it's not being shown, I can't see it.
In the year 671 of the Fourth Age, the deranged king began his terrible conquest to become emperor of all the known lands of Elyria. Enslaving men, women, and children, he dispatched the ones capable of holding a sword to the far reaches of his empire to encroach upon the lands of Fortuna. But in the summer of 696, when the old had perished and the children had known no other life than war, the deranged king's reign came to an end. Stretched too thin, the occupation of Boardwall and failed invasions of the scattered lands led to prolonged resistance. The people of Zelius would no longer tolerate the cruel leadership of their tyrannical king. A coup erupted, and the king was defeated. The empire fractured and plunged into years of chaos. After the fall, the tribes of the scattered lands that had banded together became the current-day kingdom of Vornair. The region that once housed the grandest and most elegant parts of Zelius were consumed by what is now the Kingdom of Kairos. The Kingdom of Fortuna proved its namesake, and the area sprang back into health, while Boardwall vowed to never again be occupied. And finally, a third of the former empire of Zelius was left in chaos, devoid of leadership, with the previous nobility and aristocracy cast out of the empire. But rather than wither and die, a new government arose. A kingdom composed of free people who shared nothing more in common than their desire to live in a world without tyranny and oppression. They would be the Free Kingdom of Elyria. They could be you.
So here they're going to actually talk about players These are actually players that have...
North American East server, known as Luna, is a competitive landscape with powerful nobility and influential aristocracy, but one kingdom remains unclaimed. To ensure that the last kingdom slot goes to an equally powerful player, we're running an election of sorts. From now until December 31st at midnight, Pacific time, players can go online and purchase kingdom tokens from our online store and either claim them for themselves or give them to others. After the event ends, we'll tally up the tokens and award the following prizes. First place will receive a modified monarch package so they can rule the free kingdom until fate deems them unworthy. The next 6 token winners will receive modified royalty packages so they can rule as a duchy within the free kingdom. And the following 144 winners will receive a modified courtier package so they can govern a county within the free kingdom. But electing new leaders isn't the only benefit to purchasing kingdom tokens. Each token you purchase awards the purchaser 100 EP, the same as a standard EP item in our store. And if you gift a token to another player, at the end of the event, the player will receive an additional 50 EP for every token they receive. Chronicles of Elyria is a player-centric game, and the players in our community are already helping us to write the lore and history as they build alliances, organizations, and friendships in the community.
I'm Barnabas Thalonicus Aetirion Bombastus, Duke of the Freehold Duchy of Zilphania of the Kingdom of Vornair.
Hi everybody, I'm Helenda.
I'm Deletherus, and I'm the Monarch of the Kingdom of Boardwall on the NAE server.
Hi everyone, I'm Violet, also known as Violet Winterborn.
I was really drawn in by the uniqueness of this game and the ability to create not just a character, but a dynasty in an ever-changing world.
I really was drawn into the community itself because of all the positive players and the positive feedback and all the interest in creating things for the game.
You should push to be what you want to be in the community. If you want to be that leader and you want to grow your community, this is a great opportunity to do that.
Get involved. COE is going to define a whole new genre of MMO, and we the players, we've got this amazing and unique chance and opportunity to help build and shape the actual in-game world and its communities in ways that no other studio that I'm aware of, when creating an MMO of this size, has ever allowed its player community to do.
I feel that it's possible that a monarch that is charismatic and sociable will be able to win this event versus just one person who has very deep pockets.
The great thing about this contest is anybody can participate, and you should participate because it means that you can jump in and really engage in the dance of dynasties and show your stuff and prove that you've got what it takes. And it doesn't take a big wallet to get there. It just takes a lot of support from a lot of people, and I think that that's a really exciting opportunity.
Even verbal support, I'm sure, would help out a long way. Just knowing that others have the same ideals or support the ideals of the people that are running.
So join the COE community and not just witness what's going on, but be an actual active participant in the creation of epic gaming history.
You should campaign for the Free Kingdom. You should take your chance to seize the reins of power now, because this opportunity isn't going to come again for North America East, and we really want to get the best people and the best minds involved in building this world, and now's your chance.
To participate, head to chroniclesofelyria.com now and purchase a pledge package if you don't already have one. And once you do, you can purchase and gift kingdom tokens to one another to help shape the landscape of the North America East server. And if you're an aspiring courtier, royal, or monarch, then go ahead and head to the forums now. Post in the Luna domain server and let people know what you're up to. The campaign has already begun, so good luck and have fun.
All right, so did you get all that, Asteldian?
I certainly did.
Okay.
There were some odd players.
It's actually pretty awesome, to be honest, and for me, I actually think that's probably one of the cooler aspects of the game, because so many times, especially when we first came up with these MMOs, what was the pledge that people always told us, right? Like, you're going to be able to change a world, right? Like, You're going to be living in a world. This was what they promised MMOs to be. Not saying that Chronicles of Elyria. I'm just saying the promise of what MMOs were, right? Was this ever-changing world that we'd be able to make an impact on. And what Chronicles of Elyria is doing, I think, is really fast. Other than the obvious money grab thing, which obviously this is just to start the thing out. And hopefully what they're going to do is...
hey, they're money grabbing in style, at least. I give credit to them there. At least it's a unique way of going. A very interesting idea, and I like that fact.
Yes. And again, they're an indie studio, so, you know... You're right. The one guy, and it's actually really funny, the one company, Vornier, is actually a group of players that I know specifically. So, like, I know who those people are, which I think is also kind of neat, that they're a group of players that I know who they are. And, of course, they would hop in a game like this. But I don't know. To me, it's just very fascinating to see this world expand out. And like you said, they're getting funds to help build a game, and essentially they're allowing players to not outright purchase. I mean, technically, it is an outright purchase if you had enough money to buy these tokens. You know, it's because whoever has the most gets to be the monarch. But it's not like, okay, first person to give us $10,000 like some of the other Kickstarters, like Ashes of Creation, for instance, had a $10,000 option.
No, this is a much more clever way of making money because there's no limit to it, really.
Yeah.
Until the time runs out.
Yeah, there's no like, oh, it's the first 15, 20 players. No, it's until time runs out, you keep buying tokens, and it's a way of crowdsourcing not just one person, but like an entire guild. Say you actually had a guild whose goal it was to be a monarch. Well, every guildie buy a token. Everyone has to buy so many tokens and donate them to our guild leader so and so that way we are guaranteed, or at least have a good chance of getting into this event, right?
Yes, it's a nice theory that everyone could contribute to try and make it possible rather than just going to the whale. That's a nice thought. I think people underestimate the wealth of a whale, but
oh yeah,
I mean, that's unfortunate. But at least there is a kind of hope there, and I'm not even against, because if the whale wins, well, from what I can understand, you can kill a king.
It's not like
they bought a permanent advantage. Someone can still go over. The guild who loses can still go over there and kill the whale and take over after all.
Yes, absolutely.
So even if it goes, so it makes some good money. I would be surprised if the whale didn't still come out on top. But if he's come out on top alone, then he's not going to last. So it's not like it's a game for the whales, because, as I say, the guild will just turn around, attack him, kill him, and move on. But then, of course, on the flip side, that's a lot of money. If your guild put it together and they got it, and then the bigger guild came along and went, well, we didn't put any money towards it because we just thought we'd gank you as soon as you get your kingdom. So it's certainly an interesting aspect, definitely an unusual take. I can see why people... Well,
I mean,
it's a money grab, but it's a clever one.
It is.
So I've got no problems. As I say, it's an indie developer. Of course they're going to grab money. That's how they need to do it.
Yeah.
I am curious, do people know... Can you see what the sort of polls are? Can you get any estimate of how far along someone is? Because that, I think, is a bit worrying, because if, say, a whale came along and went, I'm putting 10 grand on this, well, if no one else knows that, they're literally feeding the company money, which is fair enough, but for no hope. Like, literally, if their 50 guild members all put their money together, they still wouldn't come close to the whale. It would be nice to have an indication. Otherwise, you really are throwing money at nothing because you've got no chance of winning. I know it's not in the company's favor to show, because obviously they'd love that empty money coming to them.
Right.
But I think it would be a bit harsh if someone went, I'm putting 20k down, and no one had any idea, so they get thousands and thousands of people putting their money in, but they're never going to get close. But it's a false hope.
Right.
In that case,
and
I'd rather they knew.
You are very correct there, because, like you said, I know there's specific people who have money from however it is they have their money. And, if you're an independently wealthy person who has millions of dollars, throwing down 20,000 is not that big of a deal. It's actually funny that you speak about this, because we'll talk about, I guess, a little bit of Stephen Sharif again, the creative director of Ashes of Creation. His net worth is incredibly high. He made a lot of money in his early career, and he's in high-end real estate now. So, like, so much of the reason why Ashes of Creation did so well in Kickstarter, because they had so much of the game going, was because Steven himself was more or less funding the first year of development out of his own pocket, because he had the money to do it. I forget what his net worth is. I think it's like upwards of like $30 million or something weird like that. And it was actually known that the last game that he played was a Korean game that was brought over called Arcage. And he even freely admits he spent thousands and thousands of dollars. He was a whale that no one could compete with because he had all this money, right, from his real life, and you just cannot compete with players of that financial caliber, period.
Yeah, and it's a concept people seem to be lost on. They don't understand. I mean, for us mundane people, I mean, it's like for Pantheon, the complaint with the pre-alpha at $1,000, like, oh, you'd be an idiot or mad to do that. It's like, well, there are people out there where $1,000 is what $50 is to us. You know, you naturally always try and associate cash to your own reality, and so that can be a problem, because you're thinking, in the case of the Elyria thing, it's you might think we've got a chance when actually you have no chance. But in other games where they have a go at these indies for charging so much money, it's like, well, it's there for those who can afford it because it's nothing to them. That's why the option's there. Why wouldn't you have a $10,000 option? It might seem insane, but for someone who $10,000 is just, I got up this morning, made a coffee, I've just earned $3,000. They got no problem spending that money, so you need these options there. And yeah, people don't quite realize just how much money there is in the world that we don't have.
Yeah.
And others do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're looking at the guys like us who, I don't want to say struggle to get by, because I don't think any of, well, at least you and I don't think we're struggling as people. I mean, we are fairly comfortable. But
yeah, I mean, I don't put $1,000 down. Yeah. However, I couldn't justify putting $1,000 down. That would be money I could spend somewhere else. Whereas for other people, that's like getting your daily coffee.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I spent a good bit of money on Ashes of Creation, a lot. I think I'm up to how much did I spend? A lot. It's a couple thousand. Though part of that was for me. I made when I did the Kickstarter for it. I was gonna put 1,000 down, because that was where some of the other ones were. That I'm like, okay, this is where I want to be. I actually saw the package above that, and I'm like, okay. As a network, the options that they offer, one of the things they offered was a monthly Q&A with any backers of this point, as for previewing things, and then also an in-game instance where we'd be able to go in and chat with developers. I'm like, I run a network that does shows. Okay, of course I'm gonna do that, because then I wrote it off on my taxes as something that I needed for my show, right? So got a tax break on that, but not, I could, like you said, put 1,000 down for certain things. And while it's a lot of money, it wouldn't make me lose my house, right? Or anything like that. I could do it. And yeah, you're right. There are probably other things I could put $1,000 on. I don't desperately, but I know I need a new car soon. My car's not long for the world. I'm going to ride it till it falls apart, but it's not long for the world. And I probably should have put money towards that. But, like you said, there's other people who have the monetary capability of $1,000 a day isn't an issue.
I hear your pain.
Yeah, exactly. Lucky bastards.
And hello, Double Y Cab again, buddy. Thank you so much for coming out. This is actually going to be a weird stream, because I actually think I'm going to turn it into a podcast episode, because we've been having a lot of fun. We're just talking about different games and things like that. So it's probably going to end up being part of our Dungeon Crawlers podcast. Guess what?
Fly on the Wall podcast.
Fly on the Wall podcast. It's going to be definitely different than anything else we've done. on that show. That show is always a little bit more structured, but we haven't done an episode in a while, and I think this will be fun. Just something fun to listen to because we've had a lot of fun conversations.
We've meandered nicely.
Yes. So you'll be able to listen to it again because I'm probably going to export all this and actually make it a video, or on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you listen to your podcast, it will be available under the Dungeon Crawlers. I know you said you just kind of caught the last part of it, but we've been going now for, hold on, I have to look.
Hour and 40, I think.
Yeah, almost an hour 40. Yeah, so it'll probably be about a 2-hour show as what we normally hit before. So, yeah, I think that'd be kind of neat. But yeah, back to the Chronicles of Elyria. It is a fascinating way of them making money, and you're right. The only thing that a whale who had, even if one person came in, they didn't even have a supporting guild. You know, they just had crap tons of money. You're right. They could be disposed very quickly. The only thing, like, I don't know, would this make you mad? Because at that point, I guess it all depends on how they tell the story. Like, the fact that, like, the Kingdom of Vornair, that's a player-run guild. All those other things, Fortuna, all those areas, those are player-run guilds. And if that's now a permanent part of the game lore and history, like a place that people could go and read up on this stuff, would that be worth it? You know, that's my question, because that's essentially at this point what they're buying. They are buying the ability to have their name written in history, even if it's only briefly.
Yeah, and so to a whale, they might throw it down and think, well, I'm not going to keep this long, but at least when someone finds out history, my name will be there from like day one running this kingdom.
I wonder
if it'd be worthwhile to them.
I wonder if they have any weird like rules or something that would be like, I'm surprised we haven't seen a Gildy McGuildface, the Kingdom of Gildy McGuildface.
Yeah, God, they're going to have a player rule. Mind you, that first guy on that blimmin' video had the most ridiculous name.
It was like 9,000 names all in one.
But at least they were all sort of sensible, if a bit excessive names, you know.
Yeah, you're right. It was lore specific, but my goodness, that was a lot of names. I mean,
there's no way he's going to fit that on the name generator.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I think that's kind of neat at that point. I mean, my favorite, and I don't know, did you watch the video or did you just listen?
Oh, I was watching.
Okay. My favorite was the older gentleman, the Westwall. Yes, I love that.
What was that? That's crazy, man. Wearing like the doctor's mask from the old school times.
I know. That's my only. He said he's a monarch. I'm like, yeah, you're wearing a mask that was worn by physicians. I don't know if that's really the case, but I actually thought he was one of the more interesting characters. And I mean, even the first guy, I thought he did a good job presenting. Some of the other people on there, I mean,
this is Charisma herself.
Yeah.
Really, oh yeah.
Well, I mean, at least the two gentlemen, the older gentleman and the first guy on the video that were playing, they at least, I think they did a lot to enhance their characters. The older guy definitely gets A+ on his performance. Like, I think he played the part well. He role played the part well. He actually made me go, that seems pretty fascinating. The other guy did a good job too. He had a nice little roaring speech, and I thought that, hey, that's pretty neat. I definitely think that's neat. I think he probably could have went a little bit more lore into. The one thing I did notice in that video, which I thought was kind of neat, they didn't really show it, but he was wearing a shirt that had heraldry on it. I would be really fascinated. And I actually know the guild. I'll have to look and see if I can cross-reference the shirt he was wearing to like their guild heraldry, because if it was a guild shirt, I think that would be pretty neat.
That's a nice touch. Yeah,
not that anyone I think would probably know but it's neat that is an aspect of that game. And it definitely, especially if outside of, like you said, the obvious cash grab that a lot of people are kind of, I shouldn't say a lot of people, because some people either wrote off the game a while ago when they found out about character permadeath. But if you've already accepted that, you're kind of okay. You know, I guess maybe.
Yeah. See, what would have been interesting is if they'd put a per account a cap on how many you could buy, so that you are essentially forcing people to work as a team to get someone as a king. So you are forming a kingdom. You know, a whale can't go, here's 10,000. He'd have to make a ridiculous number of accounts to do that. You know, if the cap was like $100, he'd have to make count after account after account after account.
Right. Well, and then he would also have to buy a pledge as well, because you can only access those EP points or those kingdom tokens if you have a pledge. I don't know. Maybe they would want that. I don't know.
Yeah, so the idea of having a cap would be pretty cool, because then, you know, say a guild really putting in the effort.
But, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're right. It would solve the solo whale issue. You know, the one guy who has everything. But a lot of times those whales tend to have people that would fall. My God, you know, what would, even with a cap on account, what would stop the guy from just like PayPaling some money, going, okay, here's $5,000, buy EP tokens and send them to me.
True. See, everyone, I'll buy your pledge. If you do this, yeah, that's true.
I will buy you a pledge, and here's an additional well, I don't think I'd ever trust anyone with that much money, period. But it'd be like, okay, I'm gonna set up an account, I'm gonna buy you a pledge, and I'm gonna buy the kingdom tokens and donate to me, and then just turn the account over to you, you know, as a guildie. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever go, hey, here's $5,000 on PayPal, make sure you buy me all your kingdom tokens, because I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to go wrong fast.
And as Double Y Cab says, if whales could just crush everyone with no hope of resistance, that would bother me slightly, but at the same time, it would motivate me to resist. And again, they're not really they're buying power, but it's not character power per se. It's not like if you found a monarch. Like in ESO, when you're Emperor, you are physically stronger than other characters. Like, while you're in Cyrodiil as Emperor, you are like 300% stronger than other characters. And that's kind of a gameplay mechanic, but there's not permadeath. Whereas, you are buying power, but it's more from a system side, like being able to control a kingdom and taxes and things like that. Like, that's the power, but as a one-on-one, if you happen to find a king alone in a room and you fought him, he would be no more powerful than your character, given all things equal, being, you know, level, skill, however they're doing their character progression. So I don't know. Like, I don't know, does a king have like a hidden room with high-level NPC guards? Like, what protects the king? I don't know.
Yeah, that is an interesting factor, how easy it is to kill the king.
Yeah.
But either way, even if it's slightly more difficult, it'd just give a guild a challenge and something to go with it, wouldn't it? So I think it's actually a brilliant mechanic in that way. And as I say, it's a clever way of putting money into their pockets.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's no reason to spend the money to get it. But if you want to, it's there. So in that way, it shouldn't really bother those who feel someone's paying to win and they have no hope. It doesn't really matter. But if you're in a guild that's trying to get there, you know that eventually your guild will kill him, and the guild leader will be in charge. So you'll get what you wanted in the end without the money spent. And so, yeah, it's actually quite an interesting way of doing it. A good way of getting your pledge money, or more than your pledge money, without actually giving it in-game benefit that's long-lasting.
Now, excuse me, I'm hiccuping here like crazy. Okay, so Chronicles of Elyria went to Kickstarter back in... now, date's not important, all right? Date's not important, I don't care. They had a Kickstarter goal of $900,000, and they came out with 1.3 million, almost 1.4 million from 10,000, almost 11,000 backers, right? Mm-hmm. And it was actually funny when they hit this goal. Going back to Ashes of Creation again, this is something that's funny. They're actually the highest kickstarted MMO in history. Like, they even beat out Star Citizen. Now Star Citizen did amazing stuff after with its, its whatever you want to call it, the funds acquisition, but
the milking its customers.
Yes, but when this came out, there was actually some controversy again from this game, because the lead director came out and said that yes, they hit their goal, and that goal would allow them to do some stuff that they wanted to do. But they're estimating that the game was going to take like 30 million or something like that to finish, which actually is kind of on par with what Steven Sharif said that his game is going to cost. Like, yeah, you only got 3 million, but he's expecting he's going to need about 30 million in order to actually bring the game that he wants. Now, obviously, he has a lot of funding of his own that he's been throwing into it, and of course then the pre-order stores and stuff like that. So, we'll see how that goes. But it was funny because people, when the lead developer said, yeah, we're going to have to do additional rounds of funding and stuff like that, even though we did our Kickstarter because we're going to need like 30 million, people were like, what? I thought you were going to create this MMO with the Kickstarter. That's what we did. He's like, well, no, that allows us to create a minimally viable product, but we're going to need more money to do everything we need, right? And it was just funny to hear the people complain about that they don't realize how much games cost to make. It
is interesting. I mean, funny enough, I had a conversation with someone on the Reddit about the Pantheon with a similar thing where someone was saying, oh, that game's never going to come out. There's a list of games. He said these 3 weren't going to come out. I think he said Ashes wouldn't come out, Pantheon wouldn't come out, and I can't remember what the other one is. And I said, I'm quite surprised because out of all of them, I thought Pantheon was most likely to come out. And he was saying, oh, well, they've been in development for like 4 years. How much money have they spent, etc.? They're never going to make it. And I was like, well, yeah, but you've got to work out how these things work. So the first funding they got together is because you've got the Series A, B, and C funding. And so a Kickstarter, or the early money you get in, is essentially what they usually call it the planting the seed, which is the capital you need to start pushing forward on your project.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Pantheon made Series A funding earlier this year in April. And so that's when they've got the money to really progress from the development cycle into really pushing to the fine details, into a fully fledged, fully employed team to bring out the product. And then you've got the B stage, which is then sort of the marketing part, and then bring everyone in to sell it and make as much as you can before then C, which is when you develop beyond sort of release to make it go out even further. So the fact they got Series A funding means they should have enough capital to get to where they are, because in theory, until they had Series A money funding, all money spent previously was from the first pot of cash.
Right.
So it's like, so they can't be running out of money, because if they made Series A this year, they can't have already spent it, otherwise they wouldn't have reached it. That money you've got in your savings sort of thing to continue to reach the Series A. So through angel investments and stuff, they've got the money. And it's similar, as you say, with the Chronicles of Elyria. They went on the Kickstarter, they got 1.4 million. That's their initial money to actually start setting themselves up to then, while they're trying to raise enough money for Series A to actually be complete, which could be anything from 2 to 15 million or whatever as a Series A, whatever they've set as their Series A goal. But usually you set your Series A goal to be the money you're going to need to get to where you need to be, which is the game getting to release. So Chronicles is in that stage. Pantheon, in theory, has already reached that stage. Obviously, more money towards the end part, and during the beta phase, so you can really push out and get the word out. There's a whole other section. But in terms of actually releasing the game, worst case, your Series A should get you to the finish line.
Right.
So I don't know where Ashes is currently, but the way they're making money, I'd imagine they'll be getting there. If they haven't already.
I mean, over this, they're probably already close to. I would imagine now. Like, all I know is what they've told us so far, and I mean, let's face it. With just the sales and stuff, I would be fairly confident to say they are probably at or very close to 5 million. Just from crowdfunding, and
I mean, obviously the Series A value probably changes for an MMO. Like you said, if it's 30 million to make it, then your Series A needs to be much more.
Right.
But yeah, Ashes must be well on their way to getting to where they need to be.
Right. And of course, they also have, like I said, Steven Sharif, who has all that money. How much is he actually going to be willing to put in of his own? Has he already decided that he is going to fund Series A? Like, I don't know this for 100% fact one way or the other. It's just fascinating conversation. You have a gentleman who has a level of funding that most other people don't. Look at Mark Jacobs, who's doing Camelot Unchained, which is a PvP MMO, but he's a fairly wealthy individual, right? And he already said right off the bat that he was going to do, I think he's already done like 3 million of his own money, like is what he's been doing for Camelot Unchained to get it started, to get that minimally viable product or whatever you want to call it. He did that himself just so that he could hire developers to make the game that he wants to make, right? And now after that, he's going to, push forward and see what he can get from, crowdfunding and stuff like that. That's filling in the other parts. But he was able to try to, force himself, I guess, to hit that minimally viable product.
Yeah, I mean, the big advantage you've got with people who have money running it is you won't get to the Vanguard stage. Like when that game released, the reason it flopped was because it got released about 6 months to a year early because they ran out of money.
Right.
As simple as that. So with the crowdfunding ideas, if they can get enough to get their Series A, for example, if all goes well, they have the funding to get to the finish line. But nothing ever goes all well in an MMO, of course. So depending on how much your deficit is, you end up having to release early, which, let's face it, can kill a game. It did with Vanguard. It has other games, because if it comes out buggy or bad, a game that's kind of crappy to play, people can put up with if they can see potential there. If the game itself can't run right, people won't stick around. It doesn't matter if the gameplay's amazing. If the game doesn't operate properly, you're going to give up.
I mean, that happened to me in Final Fantasy XIV 1.0. I wanted to play the game. Like, I legitimately wanted to play the game, but I couldn't. It ran so terribly that I was physically not able to play the game and gave up because it was not enjoyable to play at all, just due to the fact that it was laggy and buggy and it was a mess.
And that's what happened to Vanguard. It came out, it sold like 250,000 copies initially, and then within like a month it was down to about 40,000 people. And it wasn't a gameplay issue here, it was just the game couldn't run. I was lucky because, of course, I'd literally, back in the day, I'd spent a fortune getting an 8800 GTX, which at the time was a top card, so my computer could power through the problems. But anyone playing on anything less than a very expensive machine,
top of the line machine or better, you're not going to
didn't have a hope, and so you're not going to stick around for that.
Yeah, especially
when it takes months and months to get any better. So games like Camelot and Ashes, they've got the advantage. If they fall short, they can go straight ahead and use their own money.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Like you, and Double Y Cabot says, in a way, I'm glad Steven had money himself. He didn't have to wrestle with investors regarding game design and content. Obviously, what is going to make a game is what investors are gonna. Well, that's why we kind of ended up with all the MMOs we did so early on in the late 2010 era. Was everyone's like, we want to jump in on the World of Warcraft pie. Well, how's the best way to do that? Make World of Warcraft cloned, because they're the ones who are obviously making all the money, right? And that's what you saw very early on, was people just trying to copy what the investors were wanting to put money on. They're like, Blizzard's making tons of money, let's do the same thing. Being able to do the self-funding, and that's actually one of the reasons why we see the rise of the rise of the indie MMOs, was people wanting to try something different that the investors weren't willing to put money in because it wasn't World of Warcraft. That's why we're seeing games like Chronicles of Elyria, Ashes of Creation, Saga of Lucimia, Pantheon. Like, nobody is going to want to fund an EQ1 remake, except for maybe Asteldian.
Yes.
But like no investor is going to go, yeah, that's a smart bet to go, because even Saga of Lucimia, which is one that both Asteldian and we follow, they've already outright said that they are not after millions of subscribers. If they get I forget what the number was, but it was like insanely low, like a couple thousand.
I think it was 5,000.
5,000. I don't even know if it was that high, but even if it was, they're like, if we have 5,000 subscribers, that's more enough to fund the people that we have and keep the game going, and we will be happy. Any more than that is gravy, right?
I think 10,000 was where they were like they could all literally go full time on the job. Yeah,
but no investor who's going to put money in there and go, I'm happy with 10,000 subs. They'd be like, no, that just would not work for.
Yeah, your only chance there is angel investors,
right?
And I know Pantheon's been lucky to get hold of them, but that's a one-off, and that's probably from someone who was just even more hardcore than I am and did have money, lots of money, and thought, you know what, I want to play this game. Here you go. Whatever it's what you're making, I like it. I'll get whatever percentage back from the game. But they were there less from the investment of money they're going to get back, and more of the fact that a game they want is going to be created.
Yes. Yeah.
But those are few and far between.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, those are people who had the money to like you said, to dump. The angel investors are just that. They are private individuals who are making a deal saying, okay, we're going to provide you with X amount of money for a share in your company, essentially, and we'll see how it goes. But angel investors generally don't make tons of money. Every once in a while, they'll make a little. That's why they're called angel investors. It's a gift, almost. That's why they call it that. I don't know. Yeah, it's different, but games, like, you would not see a AAA company making a game like Chronicles of Elyria, because they are just a very different game. And that of all games, of everyone that we talked about so far tonight, Chronicles of Elyria is the one game I would say would be the true role player's heaven.
Yeah, you'd imagine so, wouldn't you? It's pretty hardcore.
Well, I mean, that would be my thought, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe role players wouldn't like it. But I'm thinking, like, that's the one game where you would be able to really make a play on the world. But again, role players probably don't like that, because it's like, well, I can't think of the story ahead of time or whatever and then make my change, and I don't know.
I think the problem you got there is the role players you'd pick up would be very niche ones of the role players who like PvP. Most role players don't. In general, a lot of them like to avoid it because they want to be able to spend their time doing whatever. They don't want to be killed.